So the next part of our process, we were really interested in understanding what it was we were breathing. So this is where our air quality testing came into play. And for the air quality testing, we really took a citizen science approach. So we were really invested in engaging residents in air quality testing. We engaged in a participatory monitoring approach. So it wasn't as scientifically accurate, but it was focused around getting folks engaged in the process. We did use the process to collect baseline data on the 6 criteria pollutants, and we did have some hypotheses around correlations between air quality and environmental conditions and time and day of the week. So we had some things we were seeking to test as part of the process as well. So we had a lot of different monitoring types at our disposal. The photo in the top left here shows some of the monitors that we had in the Millvale library. Photo on the bottom right are some of the monitors we had outside of the Millvale library so that we can compare indoors and outdoors. And we were able to actually put some ramp monitors in the street lights along Millvale's business district. So the top right is some folks from the Public Works Department helping us put some of those monitors in the street lamps. And then we also had a series of SPECK monitors where we reached out to residents of Millvale and we sought out volunteers who would put SPECK monitors in their homes and then also right outside of their homes so that we could get different data points in different parts of Millvale. And so we gathered all of that data and we visualized it. And I'm going to show you a little animation here of some of the results from our testing. But quickly, some of the data points here, you see we had a data point at the Millvale Library, which was closest to the highway and to the edge of the river, some throughout town, and then one that was farthest away from the highway up in the hillside, right kind of near the woods and the forest. So we put together this little visualization here, and you'll see certain monitors come online at different times. The bigger the circle is, the more polluted the air is at that moment. And so we got all the residents together. We all had our ideas about which monitors would perform the best and which ones would have the worst air quality or the best air quality. And we watched this video together and we were all so surprised about the results. Everything we had learned through our research told us that the home that was farthest away from the highway, up in the hillside, up in the trees, would have the best air quality. So when we saw this and we saw that bubble that's at the top of your screen consistently being the biggest bubble, we were all really confused. So following the meeting, we all took a walk up to the location where that monitor was. And we noticed that the monitor was actually just a couple of blocks away from a diner. And the exhaust fan from that diner was blowing all of the burger smells right into the SPECK monitor. So we all had a good laugh about that. And it was just another good reminder to double check when you're engaging in a citizen science experiment, to double check your locations. And to remember, it's not the most scientifically accurate experience, but it was a great bonding experience and a great learning experience for the residents who were involved in that experiment. All right, so we had a lot of data that came out of that experience, but I'm going to share with you just a few of our key takeaways. We did see that the data seemed to correlate with the regional pollutant trends. So as the air quality improved or was worse in Millvale, it tended to correlate with the regional trends in the greater Pittsburgh area as well. We did see that ozone, however, was consistently higher in Millvale compared to other communities. And we do believe that was because of the highway and the busy road running through town. We learned that most pollutants tended to peak at night. And we believe that might be due to some of the mixing heights and the formation of inversion layers. And that some of those nighttime spikes often led to daytime ozone health hazards. So that kind of meant that during periods of hazardous health conditions, it lasted both during the nighttime and into the daytime as well. So You saw we did a lot of research, we did some data analysis, we really listened to and investigated the science with the residents of Millvale, but lived experience and the perspectives of residents was also an incredibly important part of our process and really informed the recommendations that came out of this plan. So another part of our process was to implement an air quality perception survey. And this survey was actually the very first thing that we did as part of the process so that our results weren't impacted by the meetings and the information that you had just heard us share. So I'm going to share some of the results of this survey. One of the first question we asked was, how do you think Pittsburgh's air quality compares to other cities around the country? And we were really surprised to learn that about 50% of people who answered the survey didn't realize that Pittsburgh's air quality was so poor compared to other cities around the country. We also asked them what they think some of the major sources are that affect Millvale's air quality. And the overwhelming majority believe that mobile sources traveling through or next to Millvale are the biggest contributors. And then in second place, they believe that some of the biggest sources are outside of their control. So industrial sources, manufacturing facilities, or other sources of pollution from outside of the region. We don't have a way to kind of validate or better understand specifically if their answers are correct, but based on our research, we have a tendency to agree with that assessment. We then asked them if air quality affects them. And for some folks, they believed air quality really doesn't affect them. For others, they noticed that there's an air quality problem, but it doesn't really change their behavior. It doesn't impact whether they keep their windows open or closed, or whether they walk to work or drive to work. We then had a series of statements, and we asked them to what extent they agreed or disagreed with these statements. And from this, we learned that residents of Millvale, they see poor air quality as an inconvenience, but it's really not an impairment. It's not something that severely impacts their lives. They want to take action on air quality, but they really don't know how to take a first step. They're not really sure what it is they can do to make a difference. And then another thing we learned, which was really interesting, we had this statement here, heavy pollution sources should be held accountable for their actions. And this is the statement that received the strongest response out of everything in the survey, as you can see by the heavy blue from the 5, or the strongly agree. Folks really believe that polluters should be held accountable for their actions. However, if you look at the second statement, they're really not sure whose responsibility it should be to hold those polluters accountable. Another kind of fun activity we did with the residents is we created an air quality game. So as part of this game, we had a card deck of strategies to deal with air pollution and sources of air pollution. And they were weighted based on the scale of impact. And so this was a fun way for residents to engage in a little bit of competition, but to also learn about the scale of impact that different strategies and sources could have on their community's air quality. So these are just a few examples here of some of the cards from the game.